August 19th, 2014. Exactly 10 years ago today now, NuclearCraft was released for the first time on Mediafire. It wasn't on CurseForge for another couple of months, and it wasn't even called NuclearCraft back then. It wasn't called NuclearCraft for another year or so. Originally, it was Nuclear Relativistics, version 0.1. I think it only had the nuclear furnace and maybe a fuel rod, maybe an electric furnace as well. I can't exactly remember what the first version had, but it wasn't very much. And here we are, 10 years later with the overhaul. I know that it's been quiet the last couple of years in development. I know it's been quiet on the YouTube channel for a little bit, but that's just time. That's just what happens when you move on. I'm now in Edinburgh. I'm doing a PhD in Edinburgh. I'm having a lot of fun. And but I am still in the Discord server, relatively active in the Discord server. That's the main place to find me sort of talking with people. I know a lot of people in the community post didn't even know that I was alive, apparently. I've got 3 of the 4 comments basically said, didn't realise that you were actually still alive. Well, I am alive, and to mark this 10th anniversary, this great occasion, it's a lovely day in Edinburgh, so we're going to go out there and answer some questions that you've got. I put up a channel in the Discord server, sort of AMA, and we're going to go through them on this lovely day and hopefully have some fun. So I'll see you in a bit.
Unfortunately, on my way to the square, it began to rain. I looked around and found a spot where I could start to read through your questions. But just as I started, I began to get people coming up to me, giving me cards with fringe events on. And I knew at that point that my plan would have to change. As I walked back out, I looked across the street, and up in the clouds, I saw my answer.
Hi everybody, it's not quite what I had in mind. The weather just don't want to stop. Something's going on with the server. There's a lot of people spawning in now at the top of the hill. I didn't really know what was going on, but apparently that is the spawn point. That's why I ended up there. Just see the problem. And I can't really get any of the Q&A questions up, you know, the AMA questions. So I think the best job for me to do right now is to sort of get back to the sort of main area of the world. Down there, it's like getting really foggy, I can't really see it, so hopefully I'll walk in the right direction. Yeah, see you in a bit. We slipped over the edge of that cliff there, just be a little bit careful here. Yeah, it looks like a bit of a missing chunk there. I managed to find some charged Certus quartz ore here. So it's a perfect opportunity to get the laptop going, look through some of these questions. Just got to get out here and just plug it in and go there like that, and just charge that up. Okay, so we've got some of the questions here. Just need to scroll wheel's not working very well on this trackpad. Unfortunately, it's a bit wet, but we'll be able to get there. Just bear with me here. Bear with. Just 1 second. Oh, this is not great. This, in fact, it's completely broken. Oh no, there we go. I can use the arrow keys. Okay, so here we go. I'm just going to go through them in chronological order, starting from yesterday. Derpinator 9000 asks, "What are you proudest of?" What am I proudest of? If you mean in the mod, I think probably the overhaul placement rule game. I think that's evolved over time. Originally, when I started that, the rules weren't dependent on other coolers, you can basically just place them anywhere as long as they fit the rule, whether they were next to 3 moderators or next to a certain number of cells or whatever, they would work. I think now the fact that you have these seed blocks like the cells and the moderators from which all the other coolers need to depend on, I think that's turned into quite a fun game, and it's decently well balanced. I think in the future for versions beyond 1.12, I want to try and use some sort of better way of working out what the best cooling rates are depending on how hard the rule is and so on. Although the way we did it for Overhaul was pretty reasonable. Essentially what we did is I started with a bunch of rules that I kind of roughly worked out with some very crude combination maths, and then we just did some basically testing, like everybody in the Discord server did a bunch of testing, and we just found out what the best coolers were, nerfed them a little bit, what the worst ones were, boosted them a bit. So I'd say that placement rule thing was pretty good. What advice would you give to your younger self? That's a very tough question. If you mean my younger self from like 10-15 years ago, I would say learn programming. Wasn't really a thing that we learned at school at all. I basically started getting into it very late on, towards the end of my time at uni, really. It wasn't until then that I realised I didn't know how to do programming and that it'd be really useful. And now it's most of what I do. So I think advice, learn programming. Also, it's not great advice because it's kind of hard to actually act on in practice, but try to concentrate a little bit more on your school and uni work. As much as I love doing NuclearCraft, there are times, especially during my 3rd year at uni, where I probably was spending a little bit too much time on the mod. And as much fun as it was, that 2019, 2018 era where it was actually getting quite popular and Direwolf was playing it and the Ogscast were playing it, they did a whole series on it. It was pretty amazing, but it did mean that I kind of lost focus on what I was meant to actually be doing. So that one's a little bit more subjective, but I'd say those two things. Serafel, Kalena, nuclear powered trains. Unfortunately, I'm probably not good enough at doing trains and entities and stuff like that to add a nuclear powered train. However, I wonder if it would be easy to add some sort of nuclear furnace version of the powered minecart. I wonder if it's possible to like make a really powerful powered minecart that would actually make them useful, because ever since the introduction of booster tracks, they've kind of been pointless. So maybe a nuclear furnace version of that might be quite easy. I imagine that a lot of the code would be pretty similar. Phoenixian, I don't know what the enunciation is on that, but do you have a favourite type of fission reactor? I do quite like the molten salts. At least they haven't really been built yet, the Gen 4 molten salts, but I think the ideas are very good. The ones that have actually been built, I think the Candu reactor, the Canadian reactor, is probably my favourite. It's the most interesting. So that's probably the answer. Dr. Nouget, is it Dr. Nouget? I think. What is your favourite nuclear isotope? I think my favourite nuclear isotope is possibly deuterium. I quite like deuterium. I like the fact that it's a little bit more complicated than hydrogen, but it's still possible to really study in depth with like proper quantum chemistry to like a pretty insane level of accuracy. I think the differences that you get in the electronic spectra between deuterium and hydrogen, those subtle differences, is a really good test of quantum chemistry. So I quite like that from a sort of theory point of view. On the other end of things, probably californium-252. It's kind of the last element and one of the isotopes, one of the most interesting isotopes of the last element that kind of finds any sort of practical use, because beyond that the half-lives are just too short, really. Infinite Recursion says, give me the most obscure nuclear physics fact you know. That's going to be a tough one because I need to remember it for it to be obscure. It's a bit of a particle physics one, but it has connections to nuclear physics. I think it's probably the idea that the reason that the weak hypercharges of the antiparticles are the negative of the weak hypercharges, and the weak isospins as well, of the normal particles, is because of the nature of the group SU2. It's a so-called real group, which means that its complex conjugate representation is just a change of basis of the fundamental representation. I told you I promised obscure. There you go. Dead Bunny says, I can't really read this because it's a bit wet. Dead Bunny, can you make an underhaul version for 1.16.4? There is an underhaul version for 1.16.4. You say I want your active cooling back. Unfortunately, it doesn't have active cooling, I'm pretty sure. Or at least maybe it'll come back in another form. But Igentaman is working on ports for later versions of NuclearCraft underhaul. Currently developing mainly on 1.19.120, I believe. But I think 1.16 is technically being supported right now. It's just juggling a lot of versions. I mean, I can't believe they're really able to do that. So fantastic job. I haven't really made a video yet about that port. So thank you very much for that again, Timon. It's fantastic. And yeah, so that's your answer. If you want to play NuclearCraft for later versions, they're available. They're just not by me, they're by people who have spent a huge amount of work porting them.
And then suddenly, from above, I saw two explorers making their way down the hill. I thought it was best that I pack up and answer the rest of the questions later and head down with them. And all of a sudden, I found myself in the valley of a space engineer's world. Stopped briefly for a rather unsuccessful little game of car cricket.
Going in high ball, who runners are going, and got there in the
strips. It was starting to get very, very wet. And just when I thought I had a solution, it turns out the recipes have been changed.
Come on!
Someone's built an electric one.
Unfortunately, it was just as I got to St Leonard's Crag that the power on the phone ran out.
Right, I'm back at the mountain, the hill, but had to go back and charge my phone because I ran out. But I'm back with more questions, and I think the last one I got to was Dead Bunny. So I've done Dead Bunnies, I think. Fizz185 was the next one. Why did you want to make a nuclear mod? Good question. Originally, NuclearCraft was not going to be a nuclear mod. The original name for the mod back in 1.7.10, very early on, was Nuclear Relativistics. And I wanted to add both sort of nuclear and particle physics tech, but in the end I just ended up only adding the reactors. I did want to do some new nuclear reactors. I kind of wanted to do something that was a little bit more difficult than big reactors, but also have some of the same ideas of patterns and having to build some sort of integrated, complicated system like NuclearCraft with the rules, because they have a sort of rule-based system as well, the NuclearCraft reactors. So kind of melding the two in 3D was the idea, because in some sense the big reactors were 2D as well. So mainly having a 3D puzzle was the main idea, and over time that got refined into a better version. So yeah, that was probably why I wanted to make a nuclear mod. It was that it was part of wanted to do a kind of general tech mod, but reactors were part of that. Is francium a stupid element, says Vostok? It's pretty stupid. It's not really that useful. It's also not even the most reactive element on that side of the periodic table. I'm pretty sure that cesium has a slightly higher electropositivity, is it, or a slightly lower electronegativity? So actually, cesium is just the best in group 1. So yeah, francium is pretty pointless. Yeah, pretty stupid, I'd say. Vanitas Daemon, what's one of your favourite theoretical developments in atomic and/or particle physics? I think electroweak theory in general, with the W boson, the Z boson, and the Higgs boson. That whole package
I think is probably the greatest achievement of particle physics. The fact that the Higgs boson was kind of necessary to discover. It was almost not a surprise because the rest of what it did worked so well. I think that is probably my favourite theoretical development, was the development of that particular theory. I guess the other one that comes close is gluons and the strong force, but it's not quite as colourful. It's not quite as, I mean, it is colourful because it's the colour force, but it's a little bit less multifaceted, I guess. Dank says, have you thought about doing any other mod that's unrelated to NuclearCraft? Yes, I have. In fact, I've got one small mod that's, or I think it's only one, called Cotro, which is the craft tweaker or the content tweaker register reorderer. It's actually not really required anymore because they pulled the PR that the whole point of that mod was to implement, that sorts out the ordering of the stuff that you register in Content Tweaker. But I do want to maybe make some other small mods that aren't related to NuclearCraft. In particular, what I want to do is I want to make a mod based on this stack language. If you haven't been part of the Discord server, I developed this stack language that some people have played with. Fizz actually did a bunch of the Advent of Code challenges in it, which was pretty fun. We found a lot of issues and things that we should add to make it easier to use. I definitely want to have some sort of ComputerCraft-ish open computers stuff using that. I think that'd be pretty cool. What have we got next? Knife Pony. What are your thoughts on modern Minecraft expert packs? I don't actually play them very much, but I very often spend quite a lot of time in the Discord servers of expert packs because it's quite a good way of getting to know how your mod fits in with other ones. So very often I'll look up for the sort of keywords NuclearCraft or NC in the Discord servers of these packs to try and see what people are doing, see if people are finding any problems, because very often people don't report bugs or report issues, so finding them is a very effective way of just working out what's going wrong. And also sometimes people find weird exploits or some weird combination that is a bit strange that either needs to be ironed out or just outright fixed. So I would say that expert packs are pretty good. As far as I'm concerned, I don't play as many as I'd like to. Me and my friends just play sort of kitchen sinks. We just kind of play pretty casual, but they're probably the best place for NuclearCraft for those who have the time to play them. Husky Mudkipper 56. Why s'mores? Why is there not an 8 s'more Octosminget? It's a good question. S'mores, I think pretty much the only reason that there are s'mores is because Paul once gave me some, and they were very nice. And why is the 8 s'more Octosminget not there? Well, maybe it should be. Maybe it already is there. No, it's not. I'll add it though, why not? I think it's worth adding. Nakerbot. What do you think is the best way for a new player to get into or understand the more advanced portions of NuclearCraft? Very good question. Unfortunately, I've always been pretty lazy with documentation, so actually trying to understand how it works in the first place is a little bit difficult. But once you do understand how it works, maybe trying to do the more advanced stuff is not quite so horrible, because you kind of get the basics. That was one of the main things about NuclearCraft. There's a few places where I failed to do it, but for the most part, the idea with the placement rules and the way the reactors work is that the rules are quite simple. It's just the stuff that you can build is quite complicated just through the interaction of the rules with each other. You get that kind of emergence of complexity. And I guess the best way for people to understand the more complicated elements is probably, to be honest, to get Fizz's planner and just play around and try and come up with some interesting designs. See if you can find nice patterns that have particular properties. I know a lot of people spend a decent amount of time trying to work out, for example, how to build irradiating reactors that don't ever melt even when any of the irradiators fail. There's a strange interaction that goes on with the neutron lines. The moderators on the cell side of those lines can sometimes deactivate, or will deactivate if the irradiator fails, and that can often cause big clusters of sinks to fail as a result. And so little things like that, I think, playing in the planner is probably the most visual and nicest way, most accessible way to look at the more advanced things. And also just ask in the Discord server. I mean, people very often ask really nice, really interesting questions, and we just chat about them. So yeah, any of those things. No hacks. When particle accelerator? Well, there is an add-on for NuclearCraft Overhaul. I still haven't done a video on the YouTube channel. I do wonder what the sort of ratio of, or the sort of overlap of YouTube viewers to Discord members is. I sometimes think, based on the comments that I got in the recent community post I did on YouTube, that most people, or at least a very, very large number of people who are following the YouTube channel are not in the Discord server. But there is a fantastic add-on to the NuclearCraft Overhaul called QMD by Locke, and I highly recommend you play it. If you haven't seen it yet, you're missing out. It's got so many incredible multi-blocks, loads of good particle physics machines, big machines, synchrotrons, detectors, collision experiments, all sorts of really, really nice stuff. And also he's done some documentation, so you can actually work out how the hell it works. So yes, QMD, if you've not seen that before, go and find it. Pokenar says, what motivated you to make a mod dedicated to reactors? Yours ended up being my favourite. Thank you. But plenty of mods had reactors, so what made you think I need to make my own? Well, as I said before, nuclear reactors was one of the things that I kind of wanted to maybe add. Early on I was just kind of thinking generic tech mod. Yeah, so the reactors at the time that were kind of people were playing with, I guess, were industrial craft reactors and big reactors. Industrial craft reactors, even then, probably people weren't using so much anymore. But I really like the puzzle aspect of it. It's just that it was kind of just essentially an inventory screen, and it didn't feel quite as interactive. There are new industrial craft reactors that are a little bit better than the old ones, and big reactors has now been made into obviously extreme reactors and now bigger reactors and so on, and they've added some new things. But for the most part, it is still this kind of top-down, two-dimensional, almost RBMK-like design. And I just wanted something that was making use of the 3D world a little bit more. When can do, says Mr. Brain. So can do is definitely something I want to add in the future. It's definitely a long-term project. In general, NuclearCraft has not been. It's one of the weaknesses of the mod probably is that it doesn't have many types of reactors, and the types that it does have are maybe a little bit generic. I do want to probably have some slightly more versatility in the actual types of reactors that are available, but that will come with time. So yeah, can do is definitely on the list of things that would be fun to have, 100%. Ken, what is your favourite mod? That's a very good question. What is my favourite mod? I think overall, throughout the entire time I played Minecraft, I think it's probably got to be Red Power 2. I think that mod in itself did draw a lot of inspiration from things like Best of the Wolves and Buildcraft, but I think the way that it kind of improved on them and just made them more slick was really, really nice. Combine that with the computers that it had like a fourth programming language of computers, and just in general, it had that really nice balance between the tech not being like super easy to use. It wasn't like AE2 where it's almost like super easy to just kind of get anything going. You had to put some work in to actually put together a sorting system or to put together some sort of auto crafting. But it had all the tools available to do it. I really love that. And also, of course, the wiring, the redstone wiring, which went into Project Red, and so on. I think Red Power in general, the frames as well, the frame quarries that you could build and the frame machines. I just think in general that mod just felt so slick and just such a good bar to set for mods for the future. So yeah, that's probably my favourite overall. Over the last 12 years or whatever. Tofu marinated in trauma says, how's your day going? It's a bit wet, but otherwise it's gone fantastically well. Any plans for 1.16 plus versions made by you? Okay, or are you letting other people port the mod for the foreseeable future? So right now I'm still on 1.12.2 just because Overhaul's on 1.12.2, and once I've finished on 1.12.2, I do plan to move on. I don't plan to finish modding at 1.12.2. I do plan to move on. I don't know how long that's going to take, but I do plan to do it. And the main thing is probably just a case about the ports that have happened to later versions, that they're both Underhaul. and I definitely will be porting essentially overhaul to later versions, or at least using that as my starting point to change things or add new things. I do have plans for later versions. Just right now, I'm still on 1.12.2. I'm a little bit behind the times, but that's just how it goes. Ash says, do you ever plan to make more tech mods in the future, or you just stick to reactors and nuclear stuff? So I think I said before that I might make a mod related to this stack language that I've made. But other than that, I will probably just stick to nuclear stuff. It's already, I mean, NuclearCraft is mainly about reactors, but it is still a pretty kind of expansive tech mod. There's a lot of machines, there's a lot of just other miscellaneous tech-related things, and so I feel pretty good in that space. There's a focus on the reactors, but it's still a pretty big tech mod, and trying to do too much more. I mean, already I'm a bit time limited, and trying to do too much more would just be insane, I think. So. Other than that script mod, probably stick to nuclear mainly. Red-tailed hawk. Do you plan to add the dot fakes into the mod? I think it's pretty high res, that emote, so I'm not sure that's going to happen, unfortunately. But it's got its place in the eVault. I think it can stay there, to be honest. Borb says, super ultra mega duper heavy water when hydrogen 7. What they're talking about. Hydrogen 7, will that be in the mods? I think with the way the radiation system currently works, which is another thing that I want to change, but with the way it currently works, I think Hydrogen 7's half-life is something like a few nanoseconds, is it, or a few microseconds? I don't actually know. It's something around there, which means that it would actually kill you with the current way the radiation system works if you had a bucket of it in about 1 tick, essentially. I mean, that's the shortest time there is, so yeah, 1 tick. So it doesn't sound to me like the most colourful feature in the world, but maybe I should add some really, really good hazmat suits, some like better hazmat suits to deal with Hydrogen 7. We'll have to wait and see. Jerry the Slime, what is the best advice in developing a tech mod? It's a very good question. I've only ever developed one, so I probably don't have the sort of generic, fantastic sort of generic piece of advice. I would say the main thing to just keep in mind when you're developing a mod just at all is that it does take a long time, and it does require quite a lot of effort. It's really fun, but it does take a lot of time. So if you don't have much time anyway, probably don't have like massive plans to build a huge mod. For a tech mod in particular, spend a lot of time looking at what other tech mods are doing, and try not to just do exactly the same thing. I mean, there's a lot of things in NuclearCraft that are very similar to what other mods have, but they're kind of, again, auxiliary features. Like the manufactory is very much like the macerator from IndustrialCraft and the pulverizer from thermal expansion or whatever. But I need the manufactory because there are some parts of NuclearCraft that require dusts and so on. So I think just try and make your mod stand out by having some slightly different features. It doesn't need to be completely different. I mean, if you're adding reactors, at the end of the day, it's going to be, depleting uranium fuel. But try and make it different in some way. It's okay for there to be, lots of mods that add the same tech, or in terms of like real life tech, right? It's fine to have lots of nuclear mods, but the fun thing about the fact that there are these mechanisms, the extreme reactors, bigger reactors, IndustrialCraft and NuclearCraft, is that they're all different. They all approach it differently, and that's very interesting. And it means that you can move between one and the other without feeling that you're just using the same copied material, which is nice. When heat exchanger says Chemicus. Oh yeah, Chemicus. When heat exchanger. Soon. It will be in soon. Don't you worry. I've said that for quite a while, but it will be soon. It's fine. Yes, soon. It's on the way. Locke from QMD developer says, is it TBE time? I'm not sure it's TBE time just yet. I was hoping to get some TBE stuff done. Again, a lot of the YouTube viewers probably don't know about TBE, but basically it's going to be this incredible thing. I don't think it's done yet. I was hoping to get some done for the 10th anniversary, but we'll just have to wait. Nida, congrats on 10 years. Is there any plan to redo radiation to make it beyond a chunk-based system, or make it compatible with other mods' radiation systems, such as mechanisms? Kind of. I mean, definitely when I update the mod to later versions where Pup, who is developer of Mechanism, is currently developing it, I definitely want to make it compatible with Mechanism, and I definitely want to redo the system a little bit. Whether it's like still a chunk-based system or not, I'm not sure. The current plan that I have to redo it is to still make it chunk-based, but not sort of column chunk-based. Have it 16 by 16 blocks, because in the way that the Minecraft, there are a couple of ways in which Minecraft splits the 256 high chunks into 16 by 16 by 16 cubes, and I think maybe having radiation independent in each of those cubes will give it that vertical degree of freedom that at the moment doesn't feel very correct because it's missing. So chunk-based system, maybe still a chunk-based system, but more fine-grained chunk-based system. And yes, I do think it would be interesting to have compatibility with Mechanism. What form that takes, I don't know yet. Exclamation mark says, do you plan on adding more multi-block structures, like a large fluid, energy or gas storage? So there kind of is now a large energy storage, because the voltaic piles and lithium-ion batteries do multi-block up if you place them together. Large fluid or gas storage, haven't really thought about it. It feels like to me that there's already pretty good options, especially for the fluid storage. Gas storage, I guess Mechanism, it only has those. Can you do any better than the ultimate tanks? Is there a multi-block Mechanism tank? I can't remember now. I can't remember. There might be. If there isn't, then that's a shame. But I'm pretty sure there are multi-block options in Mechanism for gases, or at least for fluids. I'm not actually sure. Large fluids block in NC, multi-block fluid storage. I'm not sure. It's not on the to-do list, but maybe we should do it. It shouldn't be too. It wouldn't be too difficult, I suppose. So yeah, we can look into that maybe. Sir Ludicrous asks. Oh, sorry. Exclamation mark also asks. And do you plan on maybe adding some scary and loud alarm blocks powered by redstone? Maybe we should have some alarms in NuclearCraft. I think that'd be a good idea. There used to be a very loud alarm on the old nuke from 1710, but that's disappeared. So yes, alarms, that'd be good. Sir Ludicrous, what is your favourite mod outside of NC? As a player, or maybe as a source of inspiration? As a source of inspiration, it was mainly NuclearCraft. That was my main source of inspiration for NuclearCraft. I kind of wanted to base a lot of the way that it worked on that. My favourite mod, though, I think, as I said before, Red Power 2. Copenicium 291, or Copenicium 291, still don't really know how to pronounce that. Are you going to add some sort of hidden lore that would require exploring the world into the mod? It would make a good addition to the exploration part of the mod, which already has wastelands and stuff. That was always in the kind of long-term plans for NuclearCraft. I really want there to be some stuff to find in the wasteland. I have some ideas for it. It just hasn't been done yet. So the answer to that question is definitely yes. I think it'd be really cool to have some stuff to explore out in the wasteland. In that case, I guess it would be more inspired by Fallout. The fact that, just wandering around in this place where there's all this red stuff. I think that'd be quite fun. Ministry of Truth asks, what was the first MC mod you made? It was NuclearCraft. That was the first one I ever made. I just started on 1710, didn't really know what I was doing, just downloaded the Forge MDK and watched a bunch of tutorials on YouTube about how to kind of get started. And it was an absolute mess for many years, didn't really know what was going on. Over time, slowly learned Java. But yes, NuclearCraft was the first one, and it's still basically my only one. Noravern asks, what was the process like when you started out? Did you ever think the mod would get as big as it has? Not really, no. I would say that the most insane part of developing NuclearCraft was the kind of 2019-2020 period, mainly 2019, where Direwolf was playing it, or started playing it, started getting in packs. The Oxcast, the whole series on it, that was just insane. I've been watching those people for like years and years and years, and to see them playing it and make a whole series about it was insane. And then Direwolf then invited me to ForgeCraft, which is the server where all the modders play, and that's obviously really cool. I haven't been on that server as much as I kind of maybe should have. But I kind of feel like I want to have a mod on the server. I feel like I should have something. I should contribute to the server with the mods before I start playing on it a lot again. But yeah, it was insane how that sort of period. It's definitely in the last few years. I haven't, I've been busy, so I haven't worked on it as much. So it's a bit of a lull period for NuclearCraft right now, but hopefully in the future I can get back to it and work efficiently and frugally and get it back into the modern Minecraft sphere again. And what was the process like when you started? It was a mess. The first few years was an absolute mess. Didn't really know what I was doing. I was trying to learn both Java and the Forge development kit at the same time, so it was a mess. But over time, you start to learn these things, and in the end, it was worth it because I learned how to program. Basically, it was very, very fruitful in the end. Animus Fracto asks, sock shoe or sock shoe. I think sock shoe. Well, no, actually, I don't think that. I think it depends what I'm doing. I think if I'm going to go somewhere and I'm not already wearing socks or shoes, then even then, I think sock shoe. Maybe I was wrong about that. Maybe it's not. I think sock shoe is uncommon actually. Yeah, I'm going to say sock, shoe. That's probably the thing that I'm more likely to do because I've likely already got socks on if I'm already in the house, and then when I'm going out, I then put shoes on. So yeah, I'm going to say sock, shoe. I'm going to change my answer to that. Definitely. That was probably the most difficult philosophical question yet. DVM28BP says, "Congrats on 10 years. Was there any other mod that inspired or frustrated you into making NuclearCraft?" Nothing frustrated me, but definitely big reactors and industrial craft were big inspirations. I mean, I think the fact that big reactors had come along, I guess it was the 164 era where it really became very popular, and it was very cool to just build these big multi-blocks. Multi-blocks were not really a thing for a while. The double chest, I guess, was the first multi-block, followed by, I guess, the IC2 reactor, but even then it didn't, it didn't feel like a multi-block in the same way that multi-blocks nowadays do. And then came along big reactors, and people built these huge things that generated all this power. And obviously, from that point of view, that was kind of a huge inspiration. But the actual more detailed elements of what you put in the reactor was industrial craft for sure. Redfire, Lord of Spiderfire, asks, when will TB be revealed? Another TB question. I'm afraid to say I cannot tell you when TB will be revealed. It will be revealed when it decides to come out. You know what I mean? It's not up to me sometimes, these things. So yes, TB will be revealed when it's ready. It's just not ready yet. I'm going to scroll down here to the next bunch. There's a lot of questions here. Funtime Gabe, will you eventually make NuclearCraft to 1.20.x? I miss how you did the Geiger counter and how it showed a small bar on the bottom left. Maybe not for 1.20. I think 1.21 has already come out, hasn't it? So maybe not 1.20 precisely, but if you mean modern versions, then yes, in the future, definitely plan to move to modern versions with overhauled. That's going to be my baseline, and I'll edit it and add stuff from there. The Computer Nerd, long-time Discord member. Is there an idea you've wanted to do but just couldn't implement yourself? That used to happen a lot. Back at the start in 1.7.10, I didn't really know what I was doing. It wasn't until 1.10.2 that I actually really understood how to even have fluids in the machine. Like the fluids, even back in 1.7.10, didn't really understand how to do it. That's why all of the fusion reactor recipes required cells of gas and outputted cells of gas. It didn't actually have any fluid handling at all. And also, a lot of the elements of the reactors early on were just because I didn't know what I was doing. The original early reactor was like this kind of weird sphere shape, and then it became 1 by 1 by 1, or 3 by 3 by 3, or 5 by 5 by 5, and so on, based on an upgrade, a reactor upgrade that you put in one of the slots in the reactor. And then it wasn't until a bit later on that I actually kind of worked out how to do proper, any shape cuboid. So yeah, that's definitely earlier on. there were so many times where I just didn't really know what I was doing, and so I just had to cut corners. It doesn't happen so much now. I kind of feel like I know enough to kind of just have an idea for some sort of some sort of feature I want to have, and generally implementing it will be fine most of the time now. It's just time mainly that gets in the way. Where was I? Oh, Thalzamar asks, what we will get? Will we get besides gas? Okay, hang on a minute. How do I read this? Will we get besides gas-cooled pebble reactors other kinds? Okay, like small modular reactors or RBMKs. So there was someone working on an add-on for RBMKs. They haven't been around in the Discord server for a long time, so maybe they've abandoned it. But I just want to have this door open for them, that they'll come back and do something with RBMKs. So RBMKs in particular, probably not really. But I definitely want to do, so yeah, pebble bed reactors is one of the next reactor types that I want to add to NuclearCraft Overhauled. But then after that, things like lead-cooled reactors, like fast reactors, and as I said, the CANDU reactor, those sorts of like classic reactors that kind of encompass quite a decent chunk of the space of all the types of reactor designs out there. So at the moment I've got basically the solid fuel reactor is essentially a boiling water reactor, and I've got the molten salt reactor, which kind of covers that sort of area of reactor designs, and the pebble bed reactor covers that sort of thing. The fast and lead-cooled reactor covers that part of things. So I think having like 5 or 6 types of reactors that kind of cover each of the kind of general areas of how reactor design is going, I think it would be a good idea. Just right now, as I said before, there just isn't really enough reactor types in NuclearCraft, 100%. Tyrone III asks, if there was one thing you could have done differently in the development of NuclearCraft, what would it be? If I'd done differently, I'm not sure. That's a tough one. Could have done differently. I suppose maybe early on I could have spent a little bit more time learning Java before I started to make the mod. It's probably true in hindsight that I spent an awful lot of time just refactoring and rewriting old bad code instead of just learning how to write good code in the first place. So I would say that generally I probably would have done differently. Another thing recently in a kind of similar vein is one of the reasons that development has been slow over the last couple of years is that I tried to refactor a whole bunch of stuff to make adding stuff easier, and it was a lot more effort than maybe it was worth. But at least it's done now. So I think just things like that, being able to plan ahead properly and know that code is going to be rewritten if you don't think through it properly in the first place. I've got a slightly better idea now of how to write code in a way that means that it's probably less likely to be terrible later on down the line. East Apollo says, if you had unlimited time and money, where would you take this mod? Where would I take it? Probably to the Maldives, to be honest. But otherwise, I'd probably just keep going with what I'm doing. I don't think there's too many drastic changes I would make to the way NuclearCraft works. I quite like the fact that it's still blocky, it's still cubey. The reactors in NuclearCraft are multi-blocks, but they're very cube block-based multi-blocks. They're kind of quite old school in that sense, right? There's some multi-blocks nowadays which are much more complicated and have these crazy animations. I'm not sure if I super love that. It's not really my style. I quite like this idea of having these simple building blocks that you put together to make this complicated thing. So I probably wouldn't take it too differently to where it is now. It's taken quite a few iterations to get to the Overhaul edition, the way it is now. And I'm generally pretty happy with the way the Overhaul reactors work and the way the mod is generally. There are definitely things that I want to change in the details, but overall, not too much. McJones Mike says, what's your opinion on GregTech New Horizons? I haven't played it, honestly, and so I don't have much opinion. I suppose my opinion is that it's at least people play it, people enjoy it. That's the main thing. I don't have any other opinion other than that. People enjoy playing it. People enjoy sinking a lot of time into it. I just don't have that time to sink into it, unfortunately. Binary Nexus asks, what exactly made you choose lithium and ferroboron for tough alloy? It's a good question. So lithium and ferroboron. Ferroboron is itself an alloy of steel and boron. And basically the only reason for a while that, well, I don't know if it was for a while, I can't remember exactly when tough alloy came in, but originally lithium and boron was added just basically for the fusion reactor as fusion fuel. And it felt like it was a bit isolated in the mod. Otherwise, it didn't really have any other uses other than that. Later on, lithium was used for the ion batteries, but other than that, it was just for the fusion reactor. And maybe I just thought that it'd be cool to have an alloy based on them. It felt quite weird, and quite interesting. Tough alloy is not a real alloy, in case you didn't know. Lithium and ferroboron. Ferroboron's not a real alloy, really. I'm not pretty sure that I don't know if steel and boron is an alloy that people use. Maybe it is. It feels more likely that it is than lithium and ferroboron. I'm not sure lithium boron iron alloy is a thing, to be honest. But it was just two types of ingots that didn't have much use. So why not give them a use and make them an alloy that's important for the mod? It's quite a sort of staple of the mod now. It doesn't make any sense, but it's a nice purple colour that is quite interesting, I suppose. Quantum Traverse. Could we pretty please get Paul back into the mod? I tried my best to get him back in the mod. Every single time I tried to get him into the mod, he just runs away. He's not interested. Maybe if I can get him and I can put him back in, then we can finally have him back. But he's just nowhere to be seen right now. I don't know. He's just not interested, I guess. It's a shame, but he just isn't. Frogspawn says, where is Webb's oranges? It's a good question, Frogspawn. I don't know where Webb's oranges is. First of all, where's Webb's? I mean, if you don't have Webb's, you're not going to have his oranges, are you? And he hasn't been around, he hasn't made any mods yet, so how are we going to get his oranges? I'm pretty sure one of the problems we've had with Webb's oranges is that Paul nicked them all. So we can't get any of the saplings. That's how it goes sometimes, isn't it? Thiz asks, how many s'mores are there in a s'more lord? It's a good question, Thiz. I'm not sure that we know, actually. Not sure that we know. We'll have to put some R&D into that and work it out, because right now I'm not sure. It's possible it's a bit like one of those baklavas, I think, like one of those many layered s'mores. So maybe the unit of s'more is just not suitable for a small lord in some sense. I'm not sure. Looking for a UBB306 recipe. Asks, will elements beyond Californium be added? So there are add-ons that add elements beyond Californium. It's not in base NuclearCraft, basically just because, I think I mentioned earlier, that Californium is kind of the last element that has any isotopes that live for any reasonable amount of time. After that, they're quite short-lived. Einstein, is it Einsteinium after Californium? I think it is. Einsteinium and fermium and so on. So yeah, they're just very short-lived. I'm not sure they really have any sort of obvious uses. So I think they've been used in RTGs and things. So I probably won't add them to the mod, but I think they're a good. I think they're a good thing to have in an add-on. They feel like a natural thing to have in an add-on. So just leave it to the add-on devs to have it in their add-ons. Pineapple Cat says, ETA on the heat exchanger. Soon. Heat exchanger will come very soon. It's one of those features that's always just right on the edge of being done. So it'll come soon. Don't you worry. Redstone says, how did you decide on exactly which isotopes to add? Good question. Essentially, I wanted to have for each of the elements. The idea is essentially that there's at most one isotope for making RTGs. So that's for, well, the one exception to that is uranium-238. There's the uranium-238 RTG, but apart from that, there's the plutonium-238 for RTGs. There's the americium-241 for RTGs, and there's the californium-250 for RTGs. And then for every element, there needs to be at least one fissile isotope, and then there needs to be one fertile isotope, neutron-absorbing isotope. So that was essentially the basic idea. and so I just looked at the nuclear data tables and found which isotopes would be suitable to be the fissile isotopes for the fuel, and which one would be the suitable fertile isotope. That's basically the end. That's pretty much just the end of the story. Just try and have some sort of consistent pattern across all the elements in the mod. That's pretty much how it worked. Sparkle 7 says, when will fusion reactors be incorporated? Again, something that I really want to get into overhaul. I've got some really, what I think should be really, really fun ideas for the fusion reactors. They'll probably come after the heat exchangers. It's just one of those multi-blocks that I just need to get around to adding. It just takes a bit of time to just add everything that's needed for them. But I think when I have added them, it'll be really, really good fun. The new fusion reactors should be just a lot bigger, a lot more grandiose than the old ones. I think you'll enjoy them. Anyone who's been in the Discord and seen some of the plans for them know that they're going to be bigger and hopefully more interesting. Who lives in the reactor core under the wasteland? Says Pulsator 2. Brian does, doesn't he? I think Brian does. Brian lives in a reactor under the wasteland. Or shall I say, who lives in a reactor core under the wasteland? Brian. Brian Williams. Ollie asks, how is Paul and what happened to his pizza? What happened to his Domino's special? It's a good question, Ollie. How is? I haven't seen Paul for ages. We don't know where he is. He's on some grand adventure, and we just haven't heard from him. He's occasionally from the occasional radio tower that he's hijacked, taken over the E-Vault. He's actually on, I think it was April 1st this year, he took over the E-Vault briefly, and maybe the year before as well. But we don't actually know where he is. He's just attacking us from God knows where. What happened to his pizza? He took it with him. Simple as that. He just took it with him. That was his meal. And then finally, Asimov, are you adding any more types of fuel? Yes, in a way. There's going to be there already is in NCO pebble bed fuels. They don't really have any use without any of the add-ons. But the plan is that they will be used in the pebble bed reactor, and then maybe in the future we'll have other types of fuel for the other types of reactors. But I'm not 100% sure yet. We will see. So the answer is yes, there is some new fuel on the way, or some new uses of current fuels in the mod that are not really usable without add-ons. And then beyond that, yes, there probably will be some more fuels. And that is everything from this list. I'm now going to quickly go onto the Discord server to see if there are any more questions that have come through since I compiled this list. It looks like there are. One of them is from Zalgo. Zalgo asks, when are you going to visit me at CERN? Well, when I'm in Switzerland, I guess, when I'm in Geneva. I haven't ever been anywhere near Geneva before, so one day I'll go and we'll meet up and we'll have a s'more. We'll make some s'mores together in Geneva. How about that? Sounds like a good idea. Protactinium239 asks, are you adding any custom structures? So yeah, Copenhagen asked about that earlier. Another isotope asked about that earlier. Yes, I do want to add structures, definitely. Whether they make it into NCO or whether they make it into later versions of NuclearCraft for later versions, I'm not sure. There's a lot of other stuff to add that I think people probably want before structures. But yes, I do want to add structures in the plans, whether it happens or not, now or later, I'm not sure. And finally, Binary Nexus. How many s'mores could a small lord s'more if a small lord could s'more s'mores? How many s'mores could a small lord s'more? Well, I think we discussed with Fizz earlier that we don't actually know how many s'mores are in a small lord. But it's not asking how many are in a small lord, it's asking how many s'mores a small lord could s'more. But I think the way that a small lord does s'more is by sort of dissociating into s'mores. So I think the answer is we don't know. Nobody knows the answer to that one. Once again, research needs to go into that. Maybe you can get on that. Maybe you can get on to trying to find out. Okay, so yes, that is everything. I'm going to go back down the hill now because it's starting to get very wet, as you can probably hear and probably see. And my battery's starting to run out again because that's what happened last time. had to go all the way back up the hill. So hopefully that doesn't happen again. So yeah, I'll probably meet you back back at the desktop where we can close things off for this video.
And we're back. We're back in the flats. What a day it's been. What a fantastic celebration, fantastic journey, fantastic quest up the hill for the 10th anniversary of NuclearCraft. Thank you all very much for playing, thank you very much for watching. And here's to 10 more years of eVault and Paul and Brian and nuclear reactors. So I'll see you in the next video. I've got a huge load to do. I know that I said, I think about 2 years ago, that I've got a whole bunch of videos to do. I still haven't recorded really any of them, but there's about 10 or 12 on the to-do list that need to go through some of the updates to overhaul, need to go through the add-ons that I haven't even spotlighted yet. I need to go through the ports to later versions of NuclearCraft that again Samantha's been working on. And I also need to go through, most importantly I think probably, Fizz's Planner. That has been something that I've promised to make a video on to Fizz for a long time, and I haven't even done it yet. So I will get around to that at some point. But for now, I need to get on with some proper real-life code. So I will end it here, and I will see you in the eVault or in the next video.